So, let me get this straight. Congresswoman, you told the Somali Prime Minister, and I have the transcript right here, that you would do everything in your power to block U.S. sanctions on Somali officials. Is that correct? President Donald Trump's voice filled the Oval Office, not loud, not shouting, just direct. That New York bluntness that cut through like a knife through butter. He was sitting behind the resolute desk, leaning back in his chair, holding a document with red top secret markings across the top. Silence. Not the silence of someone carefully considering their answer. The silence of someone who's just been punched in the gut and can't breathe. The silence of someone who's realized in that instant that they're completely, utterly caught. Ilhan Omar sat across from him in one of the chairs normally reserved for foreign dignitaries or cabinet members. She'd been in the Oval Office for 45 minutes now. What had started as what she thought would be a routine meeting, Trump wanting to yell at her about criticizing his policies probably, had turned into something very different. An interrogation. John Ratcliffe, the Director of National Intelligence, stood against the wall to Trump's left, holding 3 thick folders. He hadn't said much, hadn't needed to. His presence alone told Omar this was serious. I don't recall that specific conversation. Omar's voice was defensive, uncertain. The confidence she'd walked in with 45 minutes ago was gone. Trump smiled. Not a friendly smile. The smile of someone who's been waiting to spring a trap and is now watching it close. You don't recall. Let me help you remember. He pressed a button on a device on his desk. For a moment, there was silence. Then audio played through speakers built into the walls of the Oval Office. Crystal clear professional quality. The kind of clarity that only comes from intelligence agency recording equipment. Omar's voice came through the speakers. Mr. Prime Minister, I will do everything in my power to block these sanctions. The United States doesn't understand Somalia like we do. I'll work with our allies in Congress to stop this. You have my word. The voice responding was male-accented, speaking English with Somali inflections. Congresswoman, we are grateful for your continued support. Your assistance has been invaluable to our government. Omar's voice again. I'm doing what's right. What's right for our people. The recording stopped. The silence that followed was deafening. You could hear the antique clock on the mantel ticking. Could hear the muffled sounds of the West Wing beyond the closed doors. Could hear Ilhan Omar's breathing getting faster. You could see it on her face, the color draining from her cheeks, the way her hands gripped the arms of the chair, the realization hitting her like a freight train. That's my voice. That's a recording. The President of the United States has a recording of me coordinating with a foreign government against American policy. Trump leaned forward, elbows on the desk. You said we. The United States doesn't understand Somalia like we do. Who's we, Congresswoman? You and the Somali Prime Minister? Because it sure sounds like you're putting yourself on his team, not on America's team. Omar opened her mouth, closed it. That's out of context. Out of context? Trump nodded. Okay, I have 43 more recordings just like that one. You want me to play them all? We can be here all day. I've got time. Do you? He stood up, walked around the desk. He was wearing his standard dark suit, white shirt, red tie, the presidential uniform. He moved like a man completely comfortable in his power, completely confident in his position. He handed Omar a document. She took it with shaking hands. Top secret, no foreign, stamped across the top in red. No foreign meant no foreign nationals. This was intelligence so sensitive that even allied governments weren't supposed to see it. This is a classified assessment From the intelligence community, Trump said, standing over her, now looking down. It says, you've had 127 communications with Somali government officials in the past 2 years. 127 phone calls, in-person meetings, encrypted messages. After 89 of those communications, you voted or made public statements that directly benefited the Somali government and directly opposed stated U.S. policy. He paused. Let that sink in. You know what we call that in business? A pattern. You know what the intelligence community calls it? Foreign agent activity. You know what I call it? His voice got quieter, more dangerous. Treason! Omar stood up suddenly, the chair scraping against the floor. I don't have to sit here and listen to— Sit down, Congresswoman. Trump's voice wasn't loud. Didn't need to be. The authority in it was absolute. The voice of a man who'd built a real estate empire, hosted the #1 show on television, and won the presidency against every odd and every expectation. The voice of a man who was used to people doing what he said. You're in the Oval Office. I'm the President of the United States, and I have evidence, classified intelligence, recorded conversations, financial records, showing that you've been coordinating with a foreign government against American interests. So yes, you do have to sit here and listen. Sit down. Omar sat, because what choice did she have? She was in the Oval Office. The president had recordings. The director of national intelligence was standing right there with more evidence. She was trapped. Trump walked back around his desk, sat down. Now you have 2 choices. Choice 1, you tell me everything. You come clean about what you've been doing, who you've been working with, why you've been putting Somalia's interests ahead of America's. You cooperate fully. He picked up another document from his desk. Choice 2, I walk out of this room right now, go to the press briefing room and hold a press conference. I play these recordings for the entire world. I release these documents. I have the FBI waiting in the West Wing to arrest you the moment I give the word, and you spend the rest of your life in federal prison for espionage, foreign agent violations, and treason. He looked at her over the document. Your choice, but you need to choose now because my patience just ran out. Ilhan Omar stared at him, at the most powerful man in the world, at the man who had just laid out in brutal clarity that he had her dead to rights, that her career was over, that her freedom might be over, that everything she'd built was about to come crashing down. And she realized she had no cards left to play. To understand how we got here, how a refugee success story became a treason investigation in the Oval Office, you need to go back 3 hours earlier, when Ilhan Omar received a phone call that would change everything. Tuesday morning, January 28, 2026. Ilhan Omar's congressional office in the Cannon House office building. She'd been back from the winter recess for 2 weeks. The schedule was normal. Committee meetings, constituent calls, media appearances. She was preparing for a CNN interview later that week about immigration policy. Her chief of staff, Marcus, knocked on her door and walked in looking confused. Congresswoman, I just got a call from the White House. Omar looked up from the briefing memo she'd been reading. The White House. What do they want? The president wants to meet with you today, 2:00 p.m. Omar's expression shifted from confusion to suspicion. Trump wants to meet with me. Why? Marcus shook his head. They didn't say, just that it wasn't a request. They said a car would pick you up at 1:30 and the president expects you at 2. Can I refuse? Technically, maybe, but refusing a direct request from the president, Marcus trailed off. They both knew what that would look like. Omar's communications director, Jen, had joined them. This has to be about the Somalia stuff, the ProPublica investigation. He's probably going to yell at you about criticizing his foreign policy." Omar leaned back in her chair. She'd survived worse than Donald Trump yelling at her. She'd been called a terrorist by Republican congressmen, been accused of anti-Semitism, been investigated for campaign finance violations. She'd turned every attack into fuel, into fundraising, into higher name recognition. "Fine," she said. "I'll go. Let him yell. I'll get a great tweet out of it. Probably raise $200,000 by tonight." Her team laughed nervously, but they prepared talking points anyway. Defensive lines about her Somalia advocacy, responses to potential attacks, standard political preparation. What none of them knew was that this wasn't going to be a political meeting. This was going to be an intelligence briefing with Ilhan Omar as the subject. That same morning, 3 hours earlier, the Oval Office had been filled with the most powerful members of Trump's national security team. John Ratcliffe, Director of National Intelligence, had arrived first. He'd brought 3 bankers' boxes full of documents, transcripts, recordings, financial records, intelligence assessments, the culmination of a 6-month investigation into Ilhan Omar's activities. Mike Waltz, the National Security Advisor, sat in one of the chairs facing the Resolute desk. Pam Bondi, the Attorney General, sat in the other. Stephen Miller, Deputy Chief of Staff and Trump's most trusted advisor on immigration issues, stood near the fireplace. Trump sat behind his desk, reading through a summary Ratcliffe had prepared. Every few seconds, he'd shake his head or mutter something under his breath. "Unbelievable. Can you believe this? She's working for them." After 10 minutes of reading, he looked up. "Okay, walk me through what we have. Start from the beginning." Ratcliffe stepped forward. He was a former congressman and federal prosecutor before becoming DNI. He knew how to present evidence. "Mr. President, this started 6 months ago. The NSA monitors Somali government communications as part of our counterterrorism operations. Al-Shabaab, piracy, regional stability. Standard stuff." He pulled out a transcript. "But we kept seeing references to an American congresswoman who was very helpful in coordinating closely with Somali officials. The references were vague enough that we couldn't be certain who it was at first. But then we got this." He handed Trump a transcript. "This is from a call between the Somali foreign minister and their ambassador to the U.S. They're discussing upcoming votes in Congress on foreign aid conditions. And the foreign minister says, 'The sister will help us. She always does.'" Trump looked up. "The sister. That's what they call her, the sister. We cross-referenced that with congressional schedules and vote patterns. Only one member of Congress fit the profile, Ilhan Omar." Ratcliffe pulled out more documents. "So, we went to the FISA court, got a warrant to monitor her communications with foreign officials. And what we found," he trailed off, shaking his head, "what we found is that she's effectively operating as an unregistered foreign agent. She's had 127 documented communications with Somali government officials in the past 2 years. We have recordings or transcripts of 40 of them. In those communications, she discusses U.S. policy towards Somalia, shares information about upcoming votes, coordinates her public statements with their talking points, and in several instances appears to share information that could only have come from classified briefings." Trump leaned back in his chair. "She's spying for them." "It's more complicated than that," Pam Bondi interjected. "She's not stealing classified documents or dead-dropping intelligence, but she is sharing policy insights, vote timings, strategic assessments, things that give the Somali government advanced warning and allow them to prepare responses. It's espionage adjacent." "What about FARA?" Trump asked. "The Foreign Agents Registration Act required anyone lobbying for a foreign government to register." "She didn't register, right?" "Correct," Bondi said. She should have registered years ago. That's a felony, 5 years per count, and we can prove at least a dozen instances where she acted on behalf of the Somali government without registration. Mike Waltz spoke up. There's also the voting pattern. Every single vote related to Somalia, and there have been 12 in the past 2 years, she's voted against U.S. interests and in favor of the Somali government positions. Every single one. He pulled out a chart. And here's the kicker. Every one of those votes happened within 2 weeks of her meeting with Somali officials. The pattern is perfect. She meets with them. They tell her how they want her to vote. She votes that way. Trump studied the chart. So, she's taking orders from a foreign government effectively. Yes, sir, Stephen Miller added. We also have the financial angle. Her campaign has received over $1.2 million from organizations with direct ties to the Somali government. Her husband's consulting company has received $340,000 from Somali business interests. She's being paid by them. Trump looked at each of his advisors. So, we can prosecute her, lock her up. Yes, we can, Bondi confirmed. The evidence is overwhelming. FARA violations, espionage statute violations, possibly even treason, depending on how aggressive we want to be with the charges. But Trump could hear the hesitation in her voice. But prosecuting a sitting member of Congress is politically complicated, especially a Muslim woman of color. The media will call it persecution. Democrats will call it authoritarian. It'll be a circus. Trump smiled. I don't mind a circus, but I want her destroyed completely, not just prosecuted. I want her to admit what she did. I want her to resign in disgrace. I want her gone from Congress and gone from public life. Can we do that? Stephen Miller smiled back. If we play this right, yes, sir. They spent the next hour planning the meeting. The strategy was simple, but brutal. Invite Omar to the Oval Office under the pretense of a meeting. Don't tell her what they know. Let her lie and deny. Then systematically present the evidence, recording after recording, document after document. Build it up until she's completely trapped. Then offer her a deal. Resign quietly and avoid prosecution. Or fight and go to prison. She'll think she can survive this politically, Miller said. She survived everything else. But when she sees what we have, when she hears her own voice on those recordings, she'll realize this is different. Trump nodded. And we're recording this meeting. Everything that happens in the Oval Office is recorded, Ratcliffe confirmed. For presidential records. It's legal, and she'll be informed of it. Good. Because when this is over, I want everyone to see her face when she realizes we have her. I want the American people to see a member of Congress caught red-handed working for a foreign government. At 1:30 p.m., a black Suburban pulled up to the House side of the Capitol. 2 Secret Service agents got out. One walked into the Cannon building, found Omar's office, and informed her chief of staff that the car was waiting. Omar came out of her office wearing a navy blue suit with an American flag pin on the lapel. Her hijab was red and white striped. She looked professional, confident. She thought she was walking into a political meeting where Trump would bluster and yell, and she'd stand her ground and come out looking strong. She had no idea. The drive to the White House took 12 minutes. Omar sat in the back of the Suburban scrolling through her phone, preparing tweets about whatever Trump was about to say. Her communications director had already drafted several options. Just met with President Trump. Reminded him that criticizing foreign policy isn't unpatriotic. It's our constitutional duty. Or, the president can't bully me into silence. I'll keep fighting for what's right. She was still planning her social media strategy when the car pulled up to the West Wing entrance. A Secret Service agent opened her door. "This way, Congresswoman." She was escorted through the West Wing. Staffers stopped and stared as she passed. She thought they were staring because she was a progressive congresswoman in Trump's White House. Actually, they were staring because they knew what was about to happen to her. Outside the Oval Office, Trump's secretary looked up from her desk. "The president will see you now, Congresswoman." The door opened. Omar walked in. The Oval Office was exactly as she'd seen in photos. The presidential seal in the carpet. The resolute desk that had been used by presidents since Hayes. The paintings, the flags, the windows looking out on the Rose Garden. The weight of history in every corner. Trump stood up from behind the desk as she entered. "Congresswoman Omar, thank you for coming." He walked around the desk, extended his hand. She shook it, surprised by the cordiality. She'd expected anger. Instead, he was almost friendly. "Please, sit." He gestured to one of the chairs. "Can I get you anything? Water, coffee?" "No, thank you, Mr. President." She sat. Trump returned to his chair behind the desk. That's when Omar noticed John Ratcliffe standing against the wall holding folders. The Director of National Intelligence doesn't attend routine political meetings. Something was wrong. Trump leaned back in his chair, steepled his fingers. "I wanted to talk to you about Somalia. You've been very vocal about U.S. policy there, very critical of my administration's approach." Omar kept her voice steady. "I believe in speaking truth to power, Mr. President. When I see policies that hurt people, especially people in communities I care about..." Right. But here's what I'm curious about. You seem to care a lot about Somalia, more than about most issues. Why is that? "I have Somali American constituents. Sure, but you focus on Somalia more than any other foreign policy issue. You've introduced 3 bills related to Somalia. You've given dozens of speeches. You meet with Somali officials all the time. It's like Somalia is your main thing. Why?" Omar felt the first prickle of real concern. Why did he know about her meetings? "I have expertise on the region because I was born there." "Right. You were born there. Came here as a refugee. Great American story." Trump smiled. "But here's what I don't understand. When you became a citizen, and you became a citizen, right? Of course. When you became a citizen, you took an oath. You renounced allegiance to Somalia. You swore allegiance only to the United States. But it seems like you never really let go of Somalia. Like it's still your first priority. Is that fair to say?" "That's a mischaracterization." "Is it?" Trump opened a folder on his desk. "Let me ask you something specific. When you meet with the Somali ambassador, and you've met with him 23 times in the past 2 years, I checked. What do you talk about?" Omar's heart was racing now. How did he know the number of meetings? That level of detail meant he'd been tracking her, monitoring her. General diplomatic issues. Okay, Trump nodded. "And when you meet with him the day after a classified briefing on Somalia, are those conversations still general?" The room seemed to tilt. He knew about the classified briefings. He knew about the timing. Omar's voice came out smaller than she intended. "I don't discuss classified information." "I didn't ask if you discuss classified information. I asked what you discuss after classified briefings. There's a difference." Trump stood up. "Let me show you something." Trump nodded to Ratcliffe, who handed him a blue folder. Trump opened it, pulled out a transcript. "These are NSA intercepts. We monitor Somali government communications, terrorism concerns, Al-Shabaab, piracy, all that. Standard national security stuff. But your name kept coming up over and over." The sister is helping us. The sister will coordinate with us. The sister is very valuable. He looked up at her. They call you the sister. Did you know that? Omar's throat was dry. I don't. So, we got a FISA warrant, totally legal, approved by a federal judge. And we've been listening to your phone calls with Somali government officials, monitoring your meetings, reading your encrypted messages. He pulled out another document. You've had 127 communications with Somali government officials in the past 2 years. 127. That's more than most State Department officials who actually work on Somalia policy. Why is a congresswoman from Minnesota communicating with a foreign government more than our own diplomats? I have constituents who need help with consular issues. Consular issues, Trump smiled. Okay, let me play you one of these calls. See if it sounds like you're helping someone with a passport problem. He pressed the button. Omar's voice filled the room. Minister, the sanctions bill is coming up for a vote next week. I've been working with other members to block it. We have about a dozen solid NOs and another 20 possibles. I think we can at least strip the provisions targeting your government officials. But I need you to understand this is politically difficult for me. The Republicans are watching everything I do. They're looking for any excuse to attack me. The Somali foreign minister's voice responded, Congresswoman, we appreciate your efforts more than you know. Your assistance has been invaluable to our government. We consider you a true friend of Somalia. Omar's voice again. I'm just doing what's right. What's right for our people. The recording stopped. Trump let the silence hang for a moment. Then, our people. You said our people to the Somali foreign minister. Not your people, not the Somali people, our people, like you and he are on the same team. Which people are you talking about, Congresswoman? Americans or Somalis? Omar's face had gone pale. That's taken out of context. I have the full 15-minute conversation. You want me to play it all? Because it gets worse. You talk about coordinating votes with our allies in Congress. You discuss timing your public statements with their messaging. You promise to do everything in your power to help them. That's not constituent services. That's coordination with a foreign government. He pulled out another transcript. Here's one from October. You're talking to the Somali ambassador. You say, I'm reading your exact words. I attended a classified briefing yesterday about regional security. I can't share specifics, but I can tell you that the U.S. is planning to increase drone operations in the southern provinces. Your government should prepare a public response. Trump looked up, his expression hard. You shared information from a classified briefing with a foreign government. That's espionage, Congresswoman. That's a violation of 18 U.S.C. paragraph 798. That's 10 years in federal prison. I never revealed actual classified. You revealed policy direction and operational timing based on classified information. You gave a foreign government advanced warning about U.S. military operations. American lives could have been at risk because of what you told them. Trump walked over to an easel that had been set up near the fireplace, covered with a cloth. He pulled the cloth off, revealing a large chart. This is your voting record on Somalia-related issues. 12 votes in the past 2 years. Sanctions, foreign aid oversight, human rights resolutions, 12 votes. He pointed to the chart. You voted against U.S. interests and in favor of the Somali government position all 12 times. 100%. Now, maybe that's just your foreign policy philosophy. Maybe you genuinely believe sanctions don't work. Oversight is imperialism. Human rights concerns are overblown. Fine. He pulled out another chart, overlaid it on the first. But here's what's interesting. Every single one of those votes, all 12, happened within 2 weeks of you meeting with Somali government officials. Look at the dates. The correlation was undeniable. Meeting on March 3rd, vote on March 12th. Meeting on June 15th, vote on June 24th. Over and over, you meet with them. They tell her how they want her to vote. You vote that way. That's not representation. That's taking orders. He pulled out FEC reports. And then there's the money. Your campaign has received $1.2 million from organizations with direct financial ties to the Somali government. The Somali American Leadership Council sounds innocent, right? Except it's funded primarily by Somali business interests that are controlled by people close to the Somali government. You took their money, and then you voted exactly how they wanted you to vote. Omar tried to speak. Those contributions were legal. Legal if disclosed properly, but you didn't disclose the foreign government connections. You hid them. You listed them as domestic contributions when they were foreign funded. That's campaign finance fraud. Trump sat on the edge of his desk, looking down at her. Your husband's consulting company, what's it called? The E Street Group. That company received $340,000 from Somali business interests last year alone, triple what it made the year before. What services did his company provide to justify that money? My husband's business is separate. You live in the same house. You file joint tax returns. His income is your income, and he got paid hundreds of thousands of dollars by people connected to a foreign government right after you started coordinating with that foreign government. You don't see the problem? Trump's tone shifted, got more serious, more dangerous. Here's the part that really pisses me off. You serve on the House Foreign Affairs Committee. That means you get classified briefings about terrorism, about military operations, about intelligence sources and methods. Briefings that most Americans will never see. Briefings that could get people killed if they leak. He pulled out a document with red top secret markings. This is a damage assessment from the intelligence community. After we discovered your communications with Somali officials, we had to assess what damage you might have done. In summary, he started reading, Representative Omar attended 17 classified briefings related to Somalia, Al-Shabaab, or regional security in the past 18 months. Within 48 hours of each briefing, she communicated with Somali government officials. While we have no evidence she revealed classified information verbatim, she consistently shared policy directions, operational timelines, and strategic assessments that could only have come from classified sources. Trump looked up. You attended classified briefings about operations against Al-Shabaab, a designated terrorist organization. And then you warned the Somali government, which has documented ties to Al-Shabaab. You gave them advanced notice, time to prepare, time to warn the terrorists we were targeting. We lost 2 soldiers in Somalia in November. Trump's voice was cold now. November 8th, a Navy SEAL team conducting a raid on an Al-Shabaab compound. They walked into an ambush. The terrorists were waiting for them. 2 Americans dead, 3 wounded. He pulled out more documents. You attended a classified briefing about that operation on November 2nd, 6 days before the raid. On November 4th, 2 days after the briefing, you called the Somali foreign minister. That call lasted 28 minutes. On November 8th, our soldiers walked into a trap. Omar was shaking her head. You can't possibly think I think the timing is awfully convenient. I think you had information about an upcoming operation. I think you talked to Somali officials who have connections to Al-Shabaab. And I think 4 days later, the terrorists knew exactly where our soldiers would be. He leaned in close. Can I prove you're directly responsible? No. The leak could have come from multiple sources, but you put American lives at risk. And 2 soldiers are dead. Their families are mourning because you couldn't keep your mouth shut. Trump walked back to his desk, pulled out another folder. This one was thicker. Let's talk about how you got here. Your immigration story. You tell it all the time. Came to America as a refugee, grateful for the opportunity, became a citizen, the American dream. He opened the folder. But there are some problems with your story. In 2009, you married a man named Ahmed Noor Saeed Elmi, a British citizen. You filed joint tax returns, listed him as your spouse on federal forms, helped him get immigration benefits. He pulled out documents, spread them across the desk. Here's the marriage certificate. Here are the tax returns. Here's the green card application where you sponsored him. He looked up. Only problem. Ahmed Elmi is your brother, your biological brother. That's a debunked conspiracy theory. It's a DNA match. Trump pulled out a lab report. The FBI obtained DNA samples legally through discarded items. The analysis shows 99.9% probability that you and Ahmed Elmi share both parents. You married your brother to commit immigration fraud. He pulled out more documents. We have your birth records from Somalia. We have his birth records. Same parents. We have school records showing you grew up in the same household. We have witness statements from people who knew both of you in Somalia who confirm your siblings. He spread out photographs. This is you and Ahmed at age 7 and 9 in Mogadishu before the Civil War. This is your family's immigration paperwork. It lists your siblings, but Ahmed's name has been crossed out and changed. Someone tried to hide the relationship. You can't. I can. The FBI has been investigating this for 8 months. You committed marriage fraud. You committed immigration fraud. You committed tax fraud by filing joint returns with your brother. Each of those is a felony. Trump gathered all the documents, stacked them neatly on his desk. He walked to the windows overlooking the rose garden, hands behind his back. So here's where we are. I have 43 recorded conversations of you coordinating with a foreign government. I have evidence you shared classified information. I have your voting record showing 100% alignment with that foreign government. I have financial records showing you and your husband received over $1.5 million from sources connected to that government. I have DNA evidence that you committed marriage fraud and immigration fraud. He turned to face her. Any one of these is enough to prosecute. All of them together? You're looking at 30, 40 years in federal prison. You'll be 70 years old before you get out. Your kids will grow up without you. He walked back to his desk, sat down. But I'm going to give you a choice, because unlike what the media says about me, I'm actually a pretty generous guy. He pulled out a single sheet of paper, slid it across the desk to her. Option 1. You sign this. It's a resignation letter, effective immediately. You admit you made serious errors in judgment. You apologize to the American people. You resign from Congress, and you disappear from public life. You don't do media. You don't write a book. You don't tweet. You go away quietly. He paused. If you do that, I won't prosecute. The recordings stay classified. The evidence stays sealed. You get to keep your freedom, and your kids get to keep their mother. We're done. He leaned forward. Option 2. You refuse. You think you can fight this. Tomorrow morning, I hold a press conference. I play the recordings. I release the documents. I have the FBI arrest you on live television. You go to trial. The jury hears everything, and you spend the rest of your life in a federal prison. Trump picked up a pen, held it out to her. What's it going to be? Ilhan Omar stared at the pen, at the resignation letter, at the President of the United States sitting across from her with the full power of the federal government backing every word he just said. She stood up, her legs unsteady. You can't do this. You can't blackmail a member of Congress. I'm not blackmailing you. Trump's voice was calm. I'm giving you a choice. Face the legal consequences of your actions or resign with dignity. That's not blackmail. That's mercy. I'll fight this. I'll go public. I'll tell everyone you're targeting me because I'm Muslim. Trump smiled. Go ahead. I'll release the recordings. I'll show America you coordinating with a foreign government against American interests. I'll show them you warning that government about military operations where American soldiers died. You think the American people will care about your religion when they hear that? You think they'll feel sorry for you? He stood up, walked to a panel on the wall, pressed a button. A screen descended from the ceiling. He picked up a remote, pressed play. Security camera footage appeared on the screen. Ilhan Omar walking into the Somali embassy in Washington. The timestamp showed it was the day after a classified briefing. She met with the ambassador for 42 minutes, then left. We have 23 videos like this, Trump said. You entering the Somali embassy after classified briefings. The pattern is undeniable. Want me to release them all? Omar sat back down. Her hands were shaking. What do you want from me? I want the truth. Tell me the truth about who you're working for. Say it out loud. Long silence. Omar stared at her hands. Somalia is my homeland, she said quietly. I was born there. My family is from there. My people are there. When I see the U.S. hurting Somalia with sanctions and drone strikes, I feel it personally, like it's happening to my family. Go on. I thought I could help. I thought I could be a bridge between the two countries. Make U.S. policy better for Somalia while still serving American interests. But you couldn't serve both, Trump said. When there was a conflict, when America's interests and Somalia's interests didn't align, you chose Somalia every time, didn't you? She didn't deny it. Say it out loud. Say you chose Somalia over America. Her voice was barely a whisper. I tried to help my people. Which people? Americans or Somalis? Tears were forming in her eyes now. I wanted to help both, but when you had to choose, you chose Somalia. Say it. Long pause. The longest of her life. Yes, barely audible. Yes, I chose Somalia. Trump pressed a button on his desk. The recording stopped. The recording that had been running this entire time, capturing every word. That's all I needed. That confession on tape. You just admitted in the Oval Office that you prioritized a foreign government over the United States while serving in Congress. He handed her the pre-written resignation letter and the pen. Sign it. Omar looked at the letter. Her hands were shaking so badly she could barely hold the pen. If I sign this, what happens to me? You hold a brief press conference today. You read a statement we've prepared. You say you're resigning for personal reasons. You apologize for any errors in judgment. Then you disappear. No interviews, no book deals, no social media. You go away and you stay away. And if I don't? Trump's eyes were cold. Tomorrow morning, I walk into the press briefing room. I play the recordings of you coordinating with Somalia. I play the recording of you just now admitting you chose Somalia over America. I release the evidence of your immigration fraud. By tomorrow afternoon, you're arrested. By next week, you're indicted. By next year, you're in prison. Your kids visit you behind glass." He leaned back. "Your choice, but decide now." Ilhan Omar picked up the pen, stared at the signature line, tears running down her face. "You've destroyed me," she whispered. Trump's voice was hard. "No, you destroyed yourself when you decided to work for a foreign government while serving in Congress. I just exposed it." She signed. Trump took the letter, looked at it, smiled slightly. "Good choice." He pressed a button on his desk. Pam Bondi walked in, followed by 2 Secret Service agents. "Attorney General Bondi will escort you to the press briefing room. There are reporters waiting. You'll read this statement." He handed her another piece of paper. "Word for word, no deviations, no additions. Just read it and walk out." He stood up, extended his hand for a final handshake. She didn't take it. "One more thing," Trump said. "You'll sign an NDA. You won't talk about this meeting. You won't write a book about it. You won't discuss what happened here today, ever. If you do, all the evidence gets released, and the non-prosecution agreement is void. Understand?" She nodded. "Good. Now, go read your statement, and then disappear." 30 minutes later, Ilhan Omar stood at a podium in the White House press briefing room. Reporters looked shocked. Nobody had known she was even at the White House. Cameras from every network were live. Her voice was shaking as she read from the paper. "I am announcing my resignation from Congress, effective immediately. After careful reflection and consultation with my family, I have decided to step down from public service. I have made serious errors in judgment regarding my communications with foreign officials. I apologize to my constituents, to my colleagues, and to the American people. I will not be taking questions. Thank you." She walked off the stage. Reporters were shouting questions, but she didn't stop. Didn't look back. Just walked out of the briefing room, out of the White House, into a waiting car. She was gone. 1 hour later, President Trump held his own press conference in the same room. "Good afternoon. As you just heard, Congresswoman Ilhan Omar has resigned from Congress. I accepted her resignation. She came to me today and admitted she made serious errors in judgment in her communications with foreign government officials. Out of respect for the process and for her family, I will not be releasing specific details of what she admitted to." Reporters shouted questions. "What did she admit?" Trump pointed to a reporter. "She admitted to errors in judgment regarding her coordination with foreign officials. That's all I'll say publicly. The rest is classified." "Will she be prosecuted?" "That's up to the Justice Department. I've asked Attorney General Bondi to review the matter and make a recommendation based on the evidence. But the most important thing is that someone who was putting a foreign government's interests ahead of America's interests is no longer in Congress." "Was this a forced resignation?" Trump smiled. "I presented her with evidence. She made a choice. She chose to resign rather than face the consequences of her actions. I'd call that a smart choice." More questions, but Trump wrapped it up. "I will say this. No member of Congress, I don't care what party, what religion, what background, no member of Congress can prioritize a foreign government over the United States. That's not a Republican or Democrat issue. That's an American issue, and I won't tolerate it." He walked out of the briefing room. The reaction was immediate and explosive. Democrats demanded to know what happened. Republicans celebrated. Cable news went into 24/7 coverage mode. Speculation ran wild. But Trump never released the recordings, never released the full evidence, because he didn't need to. He'd gotten what he wanted. She was gone. By that evening, Minnesota's governor announced a special election for Omar's seat. Her congressional office was being cleaned out. Her staff had resigned en masse. Her social media accounts went silent. She disappeared. The Democratic Party was in chaos. The squad released a statement. "We are shocked by today's events and demand full transparency about what led to Congresswoman Omar's resignation." But without details, there was nothing they could do. 1 week later, Trump addressed a joint session of Congress for his State of the Union. Near the end of his speech, he went off script. Last week, a member of Congress resigned because she forgot something very important. She forgot where her loyalties should lie. When you take the oath of office, when you swear to support and defend the Constitution, you're pledging allegiance to one country, not two. One, the United States of America. He looked directly at the remaining squad members in the audience, AOC, Rashida Tlaib, Ayanna Pressley. Let that be a lesson to anyone serving in Congress. You serve America, only America, not any other country, not any foreign government. If you can't do that, if you can't put America first, then there's the door, and I will help you find it. The Republican side of the chamber erupted in applause. Democrats sat in uncomfortable silence. 3 months later, investigative reporters were still trying to piece together what happened in that Oval Office meeting. But everyone who'd been there had signed NDAs. The recordings remained classified. The evidence stayed sealed. The only thing anyone knew for sure was that Ilhan Omar had walked into the Oval Office as a sitting member of Congress and walked out having resigned in disgrace. As for Omar herself, she was never seen in public again. Rumors swirled she'd moved back to Somalia, or to Canada, or was living in Europe under a different name. Her lawyer released a brief statement saying she was focusing on her family and her faith and asks for privacy. Her Twitter account, which had once had millions of followers, posted one final tweet. "I am grateful for the opportunity to have served. I am sorry for my mistakes. I am stepping away from public life. Thank you." Then silence. The truth, which only a handful of people knew, was that she'd signed an agreement. In exchange for not being prosecuted, she'd agreed to never speak publicly about politics again, never write a book, never give interviews. Effectively, she'd been erased from public life. And she'd done it to herself by choosing to serve a foreign government while pretending to serve America. By thinking she could have it both ways. By believing she was too important, too celebrated, too protected to ever face consequences. Donald Trump had proven her wrong in the most brutal way possible. 6 months later, a reporter from Politico managed to track down one of Omar's former staffers. Off the record, the staffer said, "She thought she was untouchable. She thought being a Muslim woman of color meant she could get away with anything, that any criticism was just racism. She surrounded herself with people who told her she was brave and historic and important. Nobody told her she was wrong. Nobody told her that coordinating with a foreign government was treason." The staffer paused. Trump told her. And she learned the hard way that being historic doesn't matter if you're a traitor. The lesson was simple, brutal, and absolute. You can be a refugee success story. You can be the first Muslim woman in Congress. You can be a progressive icon. But if you work for a foreign government while serving in Congress, eventually someone will catch you. And if that someone is the President of the United States, armed with NSA intercepts and the full power of the federal government, your career won't just end. It will be erased as if you were never there.